Now here's the next thing that really catches newcomers to the service provider world off guard. We already thought we've learned every networking acronym there is to know because we came from the enterprise world, and what you find out very quickly is you haven't. The service provider world is an entirely different world, and there is plenty of alphabet soup out there for you to learn. Provider bridging is not an exception to that. There are some key terms and some key acronyms that you will absolutely need to commit to memory because this is what you'll read in textbooks. This is what you'll see on exams. And this is what you'll hear me say throughout the upcoming nuggets that we have within this skill and many other skills that are centered around service provider networking. So let's get going talking about some of the key terms and acronyms that you will encounter when you talk about provider bridging in the real world. Let's get going. Yep, there's no escaping it. We have some key terms that we have to learn about, some jargon, some service provider world usages that you'll see. Whenever you join a service provider network for the first time, you will be overwhelmed with the number of acronyms and crazy things that they actually do. So this is where we're going to get started learning about our first service provider key terms. What we're looking at here is an Ethernet virtual connection, or EVC. This is the service that we're actually trying to provide to our customers. What they would try and say is we just want a layer 2 connection from one site to the next, and we would hand them a pamphlet that says what you're really talking about is an Ethernet virtual connection. This is what would be on their bill. We're selling them an Ethernet virtual connection. And the entire network or the entire domain that we manage here is called the Provider Bridge Network. That's what this entire pink section is. Everything that is under our control as a service provider and participates in the service provider bridging, or the EVC, this is part of the Provider Bridge Network. Now, the device that we're going to be connecting to, the customer's device, this is called the customer edge. And this is probably familiar to you if you've ever worked with MPLS or MPLS Layer 3 VPN. The terminology doesn't change a whole lot here. All of the customer's equipment that we actually connect to is the customer's edge device because this is the edge of their network. They have a whole bunch of devices on the inside of that, but this is the actual edge, and this is as far as we go when it comes to caring about what goes on in their network. The network devices that we are providing for them to connect to, or the devices that they think they're connecting to, is oftentimes referred to as the provider edge. But specifically, when we're talking about bridging, we are talking about the provider edge bridge. So these 4 devices here that my customers are connecting to are provider edge bridges. And specifically, the ports that they're connecting in on, we see we've got these ports all that I'm highlighting right here. These are called customer ports. So we've got GE000, GE003, GE000, GE003, GE000, GE003, GE000, and GE003. All of the GE000s and GE003s on my PEBs are customer ports. Whereas all of the devices that are interconnecting my provider bridges, that's a connection like right here between a provider edge bridge or a connection right here between the provider edge bridge and the core. These are simply called network ports. Very simple. Now, lastly, we have in the center of our provider bridge network, we have these core devices. And if you recall, based on the framework, these devices only care about the SVLAN tags themselves. These devices will almost never, ever, ever inspect the C tag and forward based on the C tag. These devices that are only in the center of the network and are forwarding S-tag frames are oftentimes called to SVLAN bridges because they only participate in the SVLAN. They only care about the S-tag on the Ethernet frame itself. So these are some of the key terms about all of the components and moving parts that actually make up a EVC, an Ethernet virtual connection. And this is all of the stuff that goes on in a PBN. We've got the PEBs, we've got the provider bridges, we've got the SVLAN bridges, we have customer ports, and we have network ports. So that's been the key terms that you need to know about when you're actually talking about how to deploy a Q&Q environment. I hope this has been informative for you, and I'd like to thank you for viewing.